Hey everybody, Greg Harrelson here. I'm a couple minutes late, and I sure do apologize for that. I had to reboot my computer for some reason. I couldn't get my camera on, but we got it on. So hopefully everybody can see me. At least I can see myself, so I can tell that it's working. Let me just make sure that I get on the page to see if there's any questions that might pop up at some point. I'm going to talk about, as you can see here in the banner or the footer of this of the screen here. I want to talk about buyer compensation. Should we be worried? And this is kind of an extension of a conversation that I had in a previous in a Real Geeks Facebook meeting like this. And that was, about that NAR lawsuit and, what are going to be the ramification? What are going to be the changes? About a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, gosh, this was one of the biggest topics, in the industry. And, and right now, it's like a lot of people are starting to forget about it, right? But I'm just going to say that I don't think that we should forget about it. I think that we should be constantly be thinking about what do we need to, what kind of shifts, what kind of changes do we need to make in order to protect ourselves in the event something changes down the road. So just as a recap, most people know that there was a lawsuit where some major companies, including NAR, as an organization, was found, kind of guilty from a jury, and they were penalized 1.7 billion dollars, quite an extraordinary amount of money. It's going to be up for appeal. I'm assuming it's already being appealed and whatnot. It's probably going to be a long, drawn out case. But in the end, the result is there's some concerns about what kind of changes are going to come when it comes to buyer agents' compensation. What's likely to happen is most MLSs are going to say that the listing agent cannot pay a buyer's agent. That's a possibility. Now, that's different than saying a buyer agent cannot get paid. So a listing agent not being able to pay a buyer agent, that might not be that big of a deal because that doesn't mean that the money cannot come from the transaction. It doesn't mean that it always has to come out of the buyer's pocket. And I guess the real truth is we don't even know what it means. But what I'm sharing with you are like things that we do not believe is going to be the scenario. So should we be worried? And I'm going to answer the question like this. Yes, but let me explain. If you think that nothing is going to change because of this lawsuit, I think you should be very worried. Something has to change. Because in the end, even though we're dealing with attorneys that some of us may believe that are just out there trying to find some money, we do have an issue with the consumer not quite understanding what our value is as a buyer's agent. And as I mentioned in previous calls about this subject is the consumer knows a little bit more about the value of a listing agent than they do a buyer's agent because listing agents have been doing presentations their entire career. They've been interviewing with a seller, presenting themselves, the value they're going to bring to the relationship. The seller compares that to other agents that they're also interviewing, and they choose to hire you or they choose not to based on your presentation. So we've been educating the consumer for years as to what we do when we are representing a seller, when we're the listing agent. But there's very seldom any presentation made by our buyer's agent. So the buyers, they don't have a clue what we do. And a lot of what we do is after we get a contract, which they never see. They don't see how much time we have to spend, setting up appointments with attorneys and lenders and talking to home inspectors and appraisers and surveyors and, the deal's about ready to fall through, talking people off the ledge and all these things that we do that takes a tremendous amount of time. We're not sitting here telling them everything that we're doing. Rightfully so. They'd never even want to know all that information. But you just have to understand the reason I bring this up is because I understand why the consumer at some level doesn't really see our value. Now, I do believe that they believe we have value. They just don't know why we have value. So should we be worried? I think an agent that is not right now reevaluating the value they bring to a buyer and practicing how they're going to present that to the buyer in a formal presentation, I think that agent should be worried. Again, right now, there's not a lot of chatter about the lawsuit, but you're going to see this is going to come and go. Something's going to happen with the appeal, good or bad, depending on what position you're in. And it's going to get on the news. And then there'll be more consumers that'll start to hear about it. Because I have had consumers, no question. Agents in my team, my office have had buyers and sellers. They've had sellers say, I'm not paying a co-broke commission. Buyer's going to have to pay their own commission. I've had that from a seller. I've had buyers say, I'm not paying the commission. How much do you charge? I'm just going to go to the listing agent. I've had that. And it came around, all the buzz around that lawsuit. Right now, there's not a lot of buzz about it. Dust is settling, but I think the dust will get kicked up again. And then it'll settle, and then it'll get kicked up again, and then it'll settle, and then it'll get kicked up again. And it's probably going to happen for the next couple of years. So here's the good news. If I'm right, sometimes it'll be in the news, sometimes it won't be. Then the consumer will be educated or influenced by this lawsuit slowly over time, which gives you the opportunity to slowly over time make improvements and prepare. Should we be worried? If you're one of those that'll get to it tomorrow and you keep procrastinating because no one's talking about it, so therefore you're not going to deal with it until everyone's talking about it, I'd be worried. Because by the time everybody's talking about it, and then you're just now figuring out what you're going to do, you'll be behind. You want to be ahead of the curve. You don't want to be behind the curve. So let's just talk about, Greg, well, what should I be doing to protect myself of what potentially could happen in the future? Now, I said a lot of things. What could I do to protect myself from what potentially could be happening? Because I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But most of us agree that we're going to have to do a better job at articulating, at explaining, and demonstrating our value. So the question that I have for you is, why do you matter to the transaction? Why do you matter? Now, you could answer that question differently than I can answer that question. I tend to be more of an educator, right? So I would think that one of the reasons why I matter is because I empower the consumer with information that's necessary for to help them make good financial decisions in the area of their real estate holdings. See, you notice that why I matter is because I empower them. I just shared with you, in my opinion, why I matter. But that fits my personality because I'm more of an educator in this real estate space. Why do you matter? How do you present compensation to your seller? Oh, by the way, do you use the word compensation or commission? Because I predict most MLSs, we are going to do away with the word commission. Most of them already are, and all the forms are starting to have compensation on it. Notice that subtle change that's already happening. Are you using the word commission or are you using the word compensation? I recommend, I'm not an attorney, but I recommend that we follow suit and start using the word compensation. There's a reason why these changes are being made. You could talk to your broker or attorneys and figure out why are people using, why is compensation suggested over commission in language and in written form. So how are you presenting compensation? Are you informing the seller? Are you getting them to agree for a portion of the listing compensation to be paid to the buyer? Are you already getting a form like that signed by the seller so you can make sure that it's clearly disclosed so no one can come back to you and say that you didn't, and then you find yourself in a weak position in a lawsuit? Because these lawsuits are going on all over the place. Are you using a buyer agency agreement at the beginning of your relationship, or are you still waiting until it's time to write an offer? And when you write an offer, you're getting them to sign the buyer's agreement then. Because what could happen and what we should be worried about is, like, at some point there might be agents that take listings and offer no compensation to the buyer agreement, to the buyer agent. So what if your buyer happens to fall in love with that one? After you showed them 2 or 3 properties, 5 properties, then all of a sudden they come back into your town and say, "I want to see this one now." You're like, "Okay, great." And they're like, "Oh my God, let's write up an offer." Write up an offer, and you're like, "Uh-oh, there's no compensation on this one being offered." That's the wrong time to be asking your buyer for a compensation agreement to be signed that says that if you cannot get it from the seller, that they are obligating themselves to buy it. The wrong time to be having that conversation. You do not want to be playing catch up on that conversation. But right now, what I see is agents are totally ignoring all this because, well, the buyers are not really saying anything. It's not really happening. So therefore, I'll just wait until it starts to happen. When you wait until it starts to happen, it's too late because you have buyers that you've already been working with for months. You've already established relationship rapport. You don't have a buyer agent agreement to them. They're sending you properties. One day, all of a sudden, there's some properties in the MLS that have zero compensation. Happens to be one that they send. You've already got a relationship with them. What do you do now? We need all of our buyers. The buyers that we're collecting right now, the new buyer leads that we're going to get today through our Real Geeks website, we need them on buyer agency agreements as soon as we can because these buyers might not buy for 3 months. Well, that might be the time frame that it takes for something to change in your market, in your MLS. And I'm here to say, I don't know if it's going to change in your MLS, but do you really believe that there will be an agent, that there won't be at least 1 or 2 agents that will test zero compensation just to see if they can get more listings in your MLS? We all know there's somebody in the MLS that's going to do that. We know they are. They've already done it, been doing it for years, but now they can feel more empowered and emboldened to do it, create a whole strategy around it. Don't get caught not using the buyer agency agreement earlier than you ever have. If you're sitting here saying, I'm just going to wait until things change, I would be worried. If you're actually planning, if you're taking this conversation, thinking it through and planning what changes should you make, what are some subtle changes you should make now in your business to prepare for what could happen? If that's how you're doing it, if that's how you're responding to this stuff, I would not be worried. If you're procrastinating, I'd be worried. How are you presenting compensation to your seller? How are you explaining compensation to your buyer, which we haven't had to do? We've had to explain buyer agency agreements, but not the compensation that they're obligated to pay, which is becoming the norm in the industry. Have you been practicing that conversation? For those of you that are saying yes, I wouldn't be worried. For those of you that are saying no, I'd be concerned. There will be change that comes about. I don't think the change is going to be buyer agents are going out of business. I do think there will be change. I think all agents now will be required to demonstrate their value. I actually think the level of service that we provide to our buyers is going to level up significantly because we're going to be held more accountable to higher levels of service to earn that compensation. So I think ultimately the consumer wins because I think that a good portion of agents will figure out how to provide better service, how to add more value, how to disclose, how to inform the buyers at a higher level. If those are the things that you're focusing on right now, I don't think you should be worried. But if you do think nothing's going to change, when we're dealing with we're dealing with one $1.7 billion verdict and multiple copycat lawsuits attacking teams, independent companies, franchises. something will change before things stop. I'm not worried. I'm paying attention and I'm anticipating change and I'm optimizing my business. An example of a change. I am completely revamping my buyer package and the buyer package that we would give to a buyer. And I'm making multiple versions of it. I got the buyer package that I'm going to, the touchy-feely that I'll hand to them, and the offerings and the guarantees that I'll make in my buyer package. Physically, there will be a package that will be given them, a new package. But what about when I get a lead in Real Geeks and it's just like a new lead and they're not even ready to look at property? I will also have a buyer package for them that will meet them where they are, like they're pre-showings, right? These buyers are like, before we've ever shown property. I'll have a package for people that I've never met. I'll have a package for people that I've met. Constantly demonstrating, adding value. And I will have a script or a dialogue that I will use when presenting my package. So this is all a result of this lawsuit. This lawsuit has resulted at this day and age in the process today. It's already made me redo my buyer package and improve it. That's going to help the consumer. It's already helped me change or inspired me to change scripts so I could better communicate to sellers and buyers. That helps the consumer. It's already helping in a small way. If you're doing the same, I would not be worried. If you're ignoring, I'd be worried. I've said that many times because I have an office with hundreds of agents. And if it wasn't me constantly bringing it up, I can assure you these agents would do nothing about it. And I think that's the same across the country. Unless you're scared, which most of us are not because it's almost getting forgot about. But unless you're scared, we probably don't do anything about it. Now, some of you know that I have a coaching program called Real Geeks Mastery. You can see right there, rgmastery.com. If you follow that URL, you can learn more about it. One of the things that I do is I teach everybody on how to use their Real Geeks website at a higher level. I always say, hey, let's turn Real Geeks, let's monetize our Real Geeks website. Let's figure out how to make money with workflows and text templates and email templates. And let's figure out how to get more deliverability. Let's figure out advanced search filters. Let's figure out how to build pages so we can get some organic traffic, get leads for free. Let's figure out how to do PPC at a higher level so we can get a better return in conversion in our PPC opportunities. All of these things is what we're coaching within Real Geeks Mastery. But when I also finish my buyer package, everybody in Real Geeks Mastery gets a free copy. In other words, the coaching program that I have around Real Geeks called Real Geeks Mastery, I'm basically taking what I do and I share it with everybody. So there's no contracts, just check it out. If there's no contracts, it's very inexpensive. It's a group call once a week. Myself and someone named Lindsay who works on my team, attends the calls and we give you quite a bit of information. Should you be worried? I'm going to say this. Things are going to change, and I believe those who change early have nothing to worry about. Those who wait could have a rude awakening. So in my opinion, start changing now. Make subtle changes in your business. Revamp your buyer package. Revamp your the way you present the buyer agency agreement. present it earlier. Every MLS is different. Every state is different. Some of you may be required to have a compensation agreement. If you are, start practicing it, start presenting it. If you haven't used compensation agreements with buyers, it's probably going to be awkward in the beginning. But everything was awkward in the beginning. Heck, walking as a toddler was awkward in the beginning, but you mastered it. Going from crawling to walking, mastering that was way more difficult than the little bit of shifts and changes that we're going to have to make because of this lawsuit. So I just wanted to have a conversation about, should we be worried? Because there's people out there that are panicking. I don't think you should be panicking. I think you should be making improvements in your business. I do think you should be worried, because that should be what it's going to take to inspire you to take action and make improvements on your business. And if you're in the category of this is just going to go away, I don't think you should take that risk. And I'm not here on this Facebook page to instill fear. This is not doom and gloom. This is me seeing over almost 30 years of being in the business that there's sometimes we need to pay attention and there's sometimes we can ignore. This is not the time to ignore. This is the time to level up. So if there's anything I can do for you, please, you just let me know. Please check out rgmastery.com, learn a little bit. Maybe I can help you level up your business and show you how to monetize Real Geeks at a higher level. We just do much more deeper coaching than anyone on the platform. Again, I'm Greg Harrelson. We'll talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.